Kushi. This is Unfound, and today we have a very, very special guest on one of my closest friends. No, that's not true. A friend of mine from college, Srividya of the Mandarin Lab. Say hi, Srividya.
Hello guys, hi. So I'm Srividya, and today along with Kushi we would be discussing about the only Chinese temple in Mumbai. Unless, if you're not aware, then now.
So, introduce the Mandarin Lab. Tell us a little bit about the Mandarin Lab. Tell us a little bit about what prompted you to take up Chinese as a language. Is right.
So last year is when I started the Mandarin Lab. The Mandarin Lab is a Mandarin language a Chinese language learning center where I teach kids as well as adults Mandarin Chinese using different innovative methods, not just like a textbooky thing. So Kushi also can tell you more about it because she's been my student for a couple of sessions too.
I have, but let's spare everyone the horror of me speaking Chinese, because I'll just end up mixing every other language I know into Chinese. You know, fun fact that chai is called cha in Chinese, and cha is also what in Sindhi, and cha also mix up chas. So yeah.
Whoa.
That's
Smart
me
student.
One word. Srividya is proud of me.
Hashtag becoming Confucius.
All right, that's enough about me in Chinese. Let's move on to our topic for today, which is the Chinese community in Mumbai, which is the Chinese community, and particularly the Chinese temple, the only Chinese temple that Mumbai has. Now, to be very honest, Shividya, I didn't know this Chinese temple existed. Okay, it's a big story how I actually landed up going to that Chinese temple and how I landed up in how we opened it up and everything. It's actually a whole story and everything, and we'll get into that later. But you have visited that temple and you have seen the temple from the inside. You have communicated, I feel, with a few of the people in the temple, the caretaker and the small, I mean, you know, there's a very little bit of the Chinese community that basically a trickle of the Chinese community that still remains, you know, the Indo-Chinese community. So
The Chindian community.
Oh, it's really called the Chindian community?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Chindia, China, India, Chindia.
What? I didn't know it was a thing.
It is a thing.
You learn new things every day, I guess. So anyway, so tell me a little bit about what, first of all, what you thought. What were your thoughts when you went into the temple, and what did you see inside the temple? And then we'll eventually move on to how you got to the temple. So first, tell me what were your thoughts? What were you thinking when you were inside the temple? You know, when you went to the temple.
So I have like a very funny short story about how I reached the temple. The thing is, like Google obviously told me that there is a Chinese temple, and that's how I wanted to go to the temple since a really long time. But the thing that happened was I read like a lot of reviews, and a lot of them just said that the temple was shut, and it is a very silent area. And I was just wondering if the temple was still existing, if it is a silent area and if the temple is shut. Like, doesn't that just mean the temple doesn't exist anymore? But I still just went for it and went to the Chinese temple. And this was during the Chinese New Year. The Chinese New Year 2 weeks that are celebrated at between the last week of January, the first week of February is when the Chinese New Year falls. So that is when I went there, and it is a very beautiful place, and you wouldn't expect so much that is happening inside the temple. Looking at the building, like outside se kuch nahi hai. Under it's so pretty. Oh my god. So that is how I reached there. So to tell you something about the temple is actually for a god called Kuang Kun. So Kuang Kun is also called Guan Yu. He is now become very famous through video games because there are like a lot of games that are coming up. that are already existing, in which he is one of the characters. So something about him is he is considered to be the god of war in China or in the Chinese culture. Why is he the god of war? The reason is he was first a warrior who became the general. Yeah, so he was first a warrior who later became a Chinese general. He was a really, really renowned Chinese general who, after he passed away, was given like the title of a deity, like being the Chinese god. So, which is why he's called the god of war. So now you would ask, was there any other god of war that they really followed before Huang Kun or before Guan Yu was born or before Guan Yu became so powerful? So before Guan Yu, there was another god who the Chinese people prayed to, the warriors prayed to, who was Yue Fei. So Yue Fei, the thing that happened was Yue Fei defeated the Qing dynasty. The people from the Qing dynasty were defeated by Yue Fei, which is why the Qing dynasty couldn't really it is very logical that you can't pray to somebody who defeated you, because Yue Fei was against foreigners and Qing dynasty people were treated like foreigners, which is why Guan Yu became so famous and he is now considered to be the god of war. So yeah, that is that.
Wow, that is a lot of knowledge for the last 5 minutes. But that's really interesting, actually, that this little temple is just located in this street that you wouldn't even you wouldn't assume that it exists in. I mean, if you've been there, right? You've seen how the streets are and how everything is located and everything.
Okay. It's empty.
It's pretty empty. I mean, exactly. And you wouldn't even guess that there is a temple, because we're so used to seeing churches and masjids and temples and any place of worship have like a lot of crowd around them and a lot of people,
correct.
a lot of just stuff that they're selling outside the masjid. Like, did you have any difficulty with maybe just opening the temple? And at least I know for a fact that it's a very peculiar way in which you get to visit the temple, in the sense that it's never really open. You have to go and ask for the key.
Correct. Yeah.
Did you? I mean, of course, did you communicate with the? I'm pretty sure you may have communicated with the caretaker, the keeper of the temple, and the family, and their whole thing. What was your experience?
So when I went there was actually a lot of renovation and painting work going on, because again, as I mentioned, I went there around Chinese New Year. So that is the time when everybody, the whole Chinese household, is just cleaning and painting and just beautifying things around them. So the name of the caretaker is Albert Tam. And I think this is something you told me as well, that Albert Tam knows better Hindi rather than Cantonese, which is pretty fascinating. So he told me a little bit about the existence of the temple and everything in general. So when the East India Company came in, and when the Mao regime was going on, the world wars that happened, all of these incidences that happened across the whole stretch of 100 years, that is when a lot of Chinese people actually came to India and settled in that area. What is it called?
Muscat.
Muscat, yeah. Okay, Muscat. So that is when they settled in Muscat. So Muscat was actually that lane was called a Chota Chinatown of Mumbai. So, and all of these guys were traders and merchants and people who worked over there. So, but during the war, the Indochina War in 1962, was when a lot of Chinese people actually went back out of fear and out of the fact that they would be killed and they're minorities. They went back to their own nation. And a very few stayed back, Albert Tam being one of them. So he narrated the whole story to me. And the temple inside is very, very cool, because the whole temple is red in color, including the fan, including the ceiling, everything is red. So you would have guessed why, because red is a very auspicious color in Chinese. Especially another place where you would notice red that is very unusual is the face of this god, that is Huang Kun's face, is painted red in color. The reason why is that is considered to be a symbol of loyalty and courage, because as I mentioned earlier, he was a warrior. So people really look up to him as a warrior, as a really great god. He's one of the most powerful gods in the Chinese community. So which is why his face was red. That was really fascinating. And so yeah, this is a little off topic, but Kwang Yu is also preyed by a lot of gangsters, a lot of like the robbers, a lot of business people, a lot of the corporates also pray to him. The reason being, nobody wants obstacles, warrior obstacles. Nobody really wants like obstacles or wars or betrayal to arise in all of these sectors that I've just mentioned, which is why people actually pray to him. Like, you know how we have the laughing Buddha. It's said that you should keep a laughing Buddha in your house because it brings joy and happiness around. So same way, they believe to keep a, like probably an idol or a picture of Kwang Yu so that you would basically be able to solve your problems better. And a lot of people who face problems in their life generally go to this temple to get it resolved or just get answers, because he's believed to be a god who resolves your difficulties, because he fought great battles and conquered areas and won them. So that's their logic, that if he can fight that, then your day-to-day battles are nothing, are very insignificant for such a great god, which is why you can go to him if you are ever troubled.
Explain to me what happened inside the temple, because you know when we went to the temple, we were guided by this this elderly gentleman and our professor and everything. We went on a whole tour and everything, but we'll talk about that later. We were sort of like, we saw a lot of things there that we didn't understand. You know, it was really sad because we were just walking up to like the different places. We saw the second floor, if I'm not wrong. The second floor has yeah, so we saw the second floor first, and then we came down, and someone pointed us out and said, you know, hey, there is something here as well. So we went to the ground floor and we saw what's there. Now we had no idea what was what, okay, and we saw these really pretty scrolls and we saw a lot of things, and it kind of irritated me that I'm in this beautiful place that is filled with so many mysteries and there is nobody to demystify it, you know, and there is nobody else outside who even wants to come in and see it. So I really wanted to kind of know and kind of understand what is there. So can you shed some light on what symbolism is there in that temple, which goddess is on the ground floor, and of course what these scrolls meant?
Ground floor just like mainly has the fertility goddess and just some more like photo frames or pictures about the Chinese people who were there, and also the very famous Journey to the West. I think that is a very famous. Moving on to the second floor is really beautiful. Like when you're walking to the second floor, first you would see like this very huge painting of three gods. Again, those gods have a lot of importance in Feng Shui, out of which like one is shown for authority, one is shown for longevity, one is shown for prosperity. So the triplets. There was like a very colorful, beautiful picture of that. Then you walk like upstairs and you climb upstairs. You don't walk upstairs. Yeah, you go upstairs, and then there were like a lot of firecrackers just like hung to the roof. Again, very beautiful. And then you have to like take the keys and open the door. So around the door, I saw Chinese scrolls. So Chinese culture has a lot of importance. They give a lot of importance to these Chinese scrolls. The reason is they write like, you know, important like sayings or the changyus or just poems or any important good quote that will make you feel happy and pleasant is written outside on that scroll, the Chinese scroll. Again, this has a lot of importance during the Chinese New Year because there is a specific day allotted in the whole Chinese New Year ceremony where you're supposed to change those old scrolls and put new ones. So that was about the outside. Now moving on to the inside. The inside was really like whoop. So first it had like a regular bell, like of the bell that we have in like Hindu temples or just a normal bell. And then there was something that was really intriguing, was the wooden moon blocks. So for you to understand a wooden moon block, okay, yeah. So there were wooden moon blocks, and what do I mean by wooden moon blocks? They were pieces of, so there were two pieces that were like in a shape of a crescent moon, and two of these that signified like the yin and the yang. and you had to throw. So as I mentioned earlier, people go to Panmun to resolve their problems. So you have to make a wish, and like whatever you say the wish in your head, and then you throw the wooden blocks on the floor. And if one of the block is that falls on the ground is curvy and the other one is flat like this is how it looks on the ground, that means your wish will be fulfilled, or the god is listening to you and he will fulfill your wish. Or if it is both flat or both like curvy, that means your wish is not going to be fulfilled, or you should try again or something like that. So there are a lot of like interesting stories based on that also. One of it is a little funny and a little rude, which says that if the blocks that fall on the ground, and if both of them are like, so the ground is face, yeah. So one interesting story based on that is when you throw those crescent blocks on the ground, the wooden blocks on the ground, and if both the curvy parts are on the ground and the flat ones are facing to you, that is when the wish that you made is very laughable, and the gods are actually laughing at that wish. Because it's because the reason why, like, it's a very funny logic behind that. The logic is if some curvy thing touches the ground, it would just keep moving because it's not a flat surface that's touching the ground. So when it keeps moving, it actually looks like they're laughing instead of just moving.
That is very rude.
Which is why a wish is very laughable.
That is very intelligent and rude both.
This was part 1 of Unfound the Vidcast. In part 2, we discuss our individual experiences and how we actually got to the temple. If you like this video, give it a big thumbs up. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to our channel. And if you're listening on Spotify, follow our page. Also, follow the two of us on Instagram. The handles are in the description and in the video.